23 months ago, Rodney Mitchell was killed by Sarasota County Sheriff deputies when he was pulled over for an alleged seatbelt violation. At the time, the grieving mother called it murder. Today, she still calls it murder, as does her attorneys. Good morning, I'm Ed James, and this is Black Almanac. What really happened on that June evening in 2012, when a recent college graduate with a promising future met death along a Sarasota roadside? Today, we're seeking answers to questions that for too long have gone unanswered. Today's guests: Sannestine Fortin, Esquire; Vana Renejuste, Esquire; Ken Williams, expert witness in police policies and procedures and crime scene investigation, along with Ms. Natasha Clemons and Dorian Gilmer. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I thank you all for stopping by and shedding some light on something that's been dark for too long. Mr. Williams, first, you are the expert in police policy and procedures and crime scene investigation, and you did it. You recreated with a similar car what allegedly happened at that accident scene on that fateful night. What did you find?
Well, I mean, before the recreation, there are statements by officers that were given to the Sarasota Sheriff's Office, to the State Attorney General's office, and there's inconsistency in the statements. The experiment on the vehicle also references the fact that there's an inconsistency in their findings as far as what I determined.
The sheriff commissioned something similar to what you've done. Now, I know it was the sheriff's person, but you saw that report?
I did.
And you found material differences from what you found in your investigation and what was in the original report?
Well, the original report is omitting certain information, certain findings, that if you omit those findings, it changes the outcome of the experiments that were actually conducted. So if you change the outcome, you're basically not getting the proper answers to questions.
So it's the...
Or a complete answer.
It's a sin of omission.
That's correct.
You've had how many years experience in doing this?
I'm a retired police officer, homicide detective for 15 years, patrolman for 2 years, and also 3 or 4 years. I do question document examination today. So I've testified in court many times regarding very serious cases, gun-related cases, homicides, things like that.
What area did you work in?
I'm from Massachusetts. City of Brockton was the agency that I worked for.
Did you come here for this particular case from Massachusetts? You still living in Massachusetts?
I did, yes.
All right. Now, from my attorneys here, what happened to Rodney Mitchell?
Well, what happened here is just absolutely unbelievable. This is definitely excessive force that is absolutely mind-boggling. You have 4 shots that's being fired at a moving vehicle that was clearly traveling in the opposite direction of these officers. So these officers were never in the line of fire. In other words, there was never any threat that existed in the beginning, prior to the shots, during the shots, and after the shots. So this is beyond anybody's imagination. And as far as we're concerned, this can only occur here in Sarasota.
Interesting you say it only occur in Sarasota. Why did you say that?
Well, it has been reported that there's a lot of things going on here in Sarasota, in particular with the Sarasota Sheriff's Office. So this is not new news, new business. It appears that this is old news.
And you're saying that this is a common practice?
Yes.
In this jurisdiction?
Yes.
What say you?
Well, first and foremost, I want to make it clear, we want to make it clear that we're not attacking officers as a whole. We understand that officers have a job to do. They have to protect the community, and they put themselves in the line of fire every day for the sake of protecting the community. But there are some officers, such as in this case, that do not act within the law. They take matters into their own hand without regard for the safety of others and without the law. And in this case, because they did that, they committed murder on an innocent young man and then placed another young man that was a minor at the time also in danger.
And unfortunately, what you have here also, you have, again, we have to reiterate that so that way everybody understands, you have 4 shots being fired at a moving vehicle that was clearly traveling in the opposite direction of these particular individuals, these officers. Then you have some non-fatal shots, and then you have 1 fatal shot that Mr. Mitchell suffered to the left temple, which is the left side of his head, which ultimately resulted in Mr. Mitchell's imminent death. And then you have Mr. Dorian Gilmer, who was the minor child present at the time of the incident with Rodney Mitchell in the car, who actually witnessed Rodney get executed by these officers. So not only did they kill Rodney Mitchell, but they also caused substantial injury and serious injury to Mr. Gilmer, and he's continued to suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder. And then on top of that, they also put the public safety at risk as well. And so it is very important for us to point out that this shooting was so unbelievable, so erratic, that you had crossfires between the 2 officers that could have easily resulted in injuring to the officers themselves.
Well, it's interesting you saying crossfire between the 2 officers when their position, the position of the Sheriff's Department, was that one officer was afraid that somehow the car was going to hit, in this case, his sergeant, who fired the fatal shot.
Okay, well, we have to make sure that we are clear here. We understand their position. Now you're getting our position. And our position is that, 1, there was no threat ever existed at the very moment. There was no threat when Sergeant Sassy pulled out his gun and pointed it at Mr. Rodney Mitchell. And Mr. Rodney Mitchell at that point perceived that threat. And so that's why he was trying to get out of harm's way. So that any threat that existed, it was a threat that existed that they created, not Rodney Mitchell. Rodney Mitchell did not create this threat. And it's even more important for us to realize is that, you know, everybody is well understood that every bullet that a person fires, it has the potential to kill a person. So with that in mind, it's not enough to say that, oh, I thought, or I thought I was scared, or I didn't know whether or not the person had a weapon, was armed or unarmed, or I didn't know, or I didn't believe, or I believe that if the wheel would have turned it just anywhere, then it would have pulled me on my body under the car. No, it requires, there must be concrete proof that a person posed a significant threat of serious bodily injury or death at that very moment, not 10 seconds before, like in this case, not 5 seconds before, not even 2 seconds before, and definitely not after the killing. So the Sarasota Sheriff's Office cannot now come and say, well, there was a threat.
Mm-hmm. Well, which leads me to my next question. What has been the sheriff's position? We're at 23 months. Next month will be, the 11th, I believe, will be the anniversary of 2 years of the death.
Unfortunately, even with all this time having passed, there's been no answers. They've taken no responsibility for the actions of their officers. They haven't apologized to Mr. Mitchell's mother. They haven't apologized to the mother of the minor child that was in the vehicle. They haven't apologized to the minor himself, who is now an adult. They've taken absolutely no responsibility whatsoever. And the vehicle, the position of the vehicle, could not have posed a threat to the officers at the time. And if they felt that the vehicle posed a threat to them at the time, they could have easily shot at the tires. Unfortunately, they did not do that. Mr. Mitchell was not armed. There was no firearm found on Mr. Mitchell. So they can't say that they believed that he was armed. He gave them no reason to believe that he was armed. So with all this time passing, with all the questions that Mr. Mitchell's mother and Mr. Dorian has had, there's been no answers. There's been no apologies. There's been nothing but silence.
Where were the officers before the shot? Where were they standing?
Do you want me to answer that?
Well, Deputy Shaw was standing near the driver's side window. Deputy Sergeant Sassy was standing near the corner light area of the vehicle. Now, something to consider, which really has not been discussed, I don't believe, very much, is that the way police mechanics work in the field are, Deputy Shaw is at the window, so he's the primary officer. He has contact with Mr. Mitchell. He sees inside the vehicle everything that's going on inside the vehicle.
You're saying Deputy Shaw was standing at the window?
At the driver's side window. Mm-hmm. He's the person that is engaged with the citizen.
The window was down?
Window's down.
Okay.
Sergeant Sassy, who is at the front, doesn't have the vantage of seeing inside the vehicle as does Deputy Shaw. So what is perplexing is Sergeant Sassy is perceiving a threat, but he's not the primary officer on the scene. He's the backup officer. Deputy Shaw is not drawing his weapon, pointing his muzzle at any citizen in firing. He's doing it in reaction to Sergeant Sassy's shots being fired.
So now, Deputy Shaw was talking to Mr. Mitchell, apparently before all of this began, and he hadn't drawn a gun.
He had not drawn a gun, but the reports reflect from the Sarasota Sheriff's Office that while Deputy Shaw's at the window engaging Mr. Mitchell, Sergeant Sassy is at the front of the vehicle drawing his weapon out, pointing, aiming, and it's a tactical weapon. Does it have a laser sight on it? Does it have a flashlight on it to disorient the person that's sitting inside the driver's seat? From the person sitting in the driver's seat, it's going to be an intimidating factor for someone to take a gun out, point it at you. That's frightening. So we have Mr. Mitchell's intent, which is he turned the steering wheel away from every officer that was there. We have an officer that's in the front that has a deadly weapon that's pointed at someone that hasn't committed a felony, hasn't committed a crime. He's being stopped for minor traffic violation, but yet he's being treated like he's a felon. The officers in their reports are trying to elevate something that is a minor traffic violation to an aggravated assault, which is a felony in the state of Florida, to justify a wrongful shooting.
Can I add something? And also, what they really did in this particular case is they really did set Rodney Mitchell up for the death penalty. I know that's harsh, but that's exactly what happened. They really set him up for the death penalty here. And on top of that, we must clear this out, is that the only thing Rodney Mitchell was suspect of was this alleged seatbelt violation, which it's undisputed, by the way, that he in fact had on his seatbelt prior to initiating the stop, during the traffic stop, because according to Adam Shaw's own recorded statement to his investigator, he stipulate when asked.
That's the deputy who pulled him over.
This is the deputy who pulled him over. When asked whether or not Mr. Mitchell had on his seatbelt, he says, yeah, he was belted in at the traffic stop. So they asked him again to clarify, and he says, yes, he had on his belt. And when the EMS, you know, before the EMS pulled his dead body out of the vehicle, they had to unbuckle his seatbelt to pull him out. So it's undisputed that Mr. Mitchell had on his seatbelt. Again, they're trying to create this probable cause where probable cause didn't exist.
Go ahead.
I mean, just to add on, again, in the reports, it reflects clearly that you had two different things going on. You had Deputy Shaw that's at the window that's having a conversation with Mr. Mitchell. You have Sergeant Sassy that's at the front of the vehicle, according to his statements, that's saying, show me your hands. Why the sergeant perceived a threat that the deputy at the window did not perceive as a threat is baffling. But at the end of the day, it resulted in Mr. Mitchell being killed wrongfully.
We have Mrs. Clemons, Mr. Mitchell's mother, with us, and his cousin who was in the car at that time. Let's take a break and talk to them. First, I would like to ask either of the two of you, the attorneys, how do you plan to handle this case with what we've heard?
First, we have to start by analyzing the training that these officers had. And when you look at it from that perspective, you would see that this particular case was a total breakdown in police policies, police procedures, and police protocol. Specifically, the Sarasota Sheriff's Office policy and procedures are consistent with police policy procedures throughout this country. They are trained on how to position their cars at a traffic stop. They're trained specifically to park their marked police vehicle behind the suspect. They're trained on how to communicate to the dispatcher prior to initiating the traffic stop. They're trained on how to radio in a traffic stop.
Are you saying none of this happened then?
Exactly. They're trained on how to attempt to disable a motor vehicle or gain control over the person before they actually shoot the person. And they're trained on not to shoot at a moving vehicle. The problem with shooting at a motor vehicle is that you can, you know, disable the driver by killing him, but the car does not stop. The car continues to move. And that's exactly what happened in this case. And when these officers, you know, gained control or seized Mr. Mitchell by killing him, the car continued to move. Now the problem is that Mr. Mitchell being dead at the moment, he can't avoid crashing into other motor vehicles.
Okay. I think we get it, but I want to ask Mrs. Clemons, give her an opportunity. Mrs. Clemons, for almost 2 years, you have continued this vigil, as you say, to bring justice for your son.
Yes, sir.
You've been quiet. You have had memorial services. You've had gatherings, always in a quiet, peaceful manner. It is our understanding you had an opportunity on one occasion to speak to the sheriff in the presence of the police chief.
Yes, sir.
What did you ask him and what did he tell you?
I asked him, I initially informed him, you know, introduced myself to let him know who I was. And I asked him, how is it that he can justify a case such as my son's shooting? And he said that my son wasn't the only person they killed. They had killed 7 others. while the deputy, while chief police
Sheriff Knight.
Sheriff Knight, Tom Knight, informed me of that while DePino, the police from the police department, stood there as well. Mm-hmm. And he said that, and he walked off with no conscience.
That it was no big deal.
No, it was no big deal.
They've killed 7 others.
Yes.
How did the police chief? Now I know the police chief had nothing to do with this, but the two of them have to be together at a conference, if you will. How did she react to that? Did she say anything to you?
She apologized for him immediately. She gave me a hug and said that if she can be of any help, please give her a call.
Mr. Gilmer, you were unknown to everyone immediately after the shooting. As they said, someone else was in the car who ran away. Why did you run away?
I thought they was gonna kill me. I just seen them witness kill who I looked up to as a brother, father figure, all that. I seen them take him like it was nothing. So I thought they was gonna kill me. I couldn't stay there.
At some point, you did go into the sheriff's office and talk to them.
Yes, sir.
Okay. You were 2 years ago. You were a minor. What are you doing today?
I'm currently going into my sophomore year at Bethune-Cookman College, majoring in business administration.
Mrs. Mitchell, I keep calling you Mrs. Mitchell, but Mrs. Clemons. At this point, what do you, of all the things that you could want, what do you want most to happen now that you have some strong legal counsel here?
I want the entire case to be torn apart so that we can prove Rodney's innocence. He was innocent from day one, from when it initially happened. And I also want the officers to pay for what they've done. I mean, they were wrong. And this is what I would like to have justice so I can move forward with my life.
I have a question for you all, and I know you all have a lot of research. It has come to our attention that the Deputy Shaw, who pulled over Mr. Mitchell, had just come off a 90-day suspension for the way he made traffic stops and pull over police. Did you all find that in your research with the Sheriff's Department?
Yes, it is in his police personnel file, and that's one of the reasons why Sergeant Sassy had to be present at the traffic stop.
What did you find out about Sergeant Sassy, who fired the first shot and ultimately shot that killed Mr. Mitchell? Well,
we found out that Sergeant Sassy had been involved in a prior shooting back in 2007, and they rendered that particular shooting justifiable.
And that shooting, if I may add, he shot that individual approximately 57 times. 57 times. It was several officers and there were 57 shots fired. Mm-hmm. It does not take 57 shots to stop an individual.
And that's why we say that that was excessive. One shot being fired without cause is excessive. It's excessive force.
But just as in this case, they rendered that case also justifiable. So if that's justifiable, we presume anything and everything is always going to be rendered justifiable.
Here in Sarasota.
In Sarasota.
Hmm. What happened after the Mitchell shooting with Mr. Deputy Shaw, the person who had served the 90-day suspension and had to have every traffic stop he made? After that, he had to have the sergeant come to the traffic stop. Did anything happen to him after? Was there any more training Has the sheriff's department changed its rules anyway?
No.
Well, Adam Shaw, according to our knowledge, did not receive additional training. However, they have, the Sarasota Sheriff's Office has amended and revised their policy and procedure so many times after the Rodney Mitchell case.
But nothing happened specifically to those officers. They're still out and about, stopping individuals.
Mm-hmm. Right, and what I do know is that he has been married. He has a happy life, while my life is still in shambles, trying to find out and get the truth about what happened to my son.
It's interesting because when this happened, Mrs. Clemons, you were in nursing school.
Mm-hmm.
Your son had graduated from college with his bachelor's degree earlier
mm-hmm.
in the previous year, and you were almost to complete your bachelor's degree in nursing.
Correct.
But you had to grieve for your son.
Yes, but I continued to go to school. I never stopped. And
you graduated?
I did graduate.
You graduated a month after your son's death?
Correct.
You travel often from Sarasota to Manatee County.
Yes.
At one point, I know you lived in Manatee County, but you grew up in Sarasota.
Mm-hmm.
Since that time, have you been stopped by law enforcement?
I have. I've been stopped on several occasions, and it's only been by the sheriff.
And what do they stop you for? What do they tell you you're doing wrong? What do they, if they give you tickets, what do they give you tickets for?
One gave me, there were different sheriffs. One gave me a warning because he initially, when he pulled me over and he got out of the car, he was being really rude. So I was talking to him and letting him know that, you know, about my rights, that I know about my rights. So then he started being nice and he said that, okay, well, this is your warning. So that was it. Then the second occasion, the officer stopped me because he said I was speeding. And he gave me a ticket, but he gave me a ticket for a lower amount.
Do you believe this is harassment, or do you believe they know who you are?
They know exactly who I am. On our way to the burial site to lay Rodney at rest, the officers pulled us over. They got behind us and attempted to pull us over, and I told the funeral home guy, do not stop.
They attempted to stop the funeral procession?
Yes.
And after you all went on anyway, did they follow you all the way to the cemetery?
No, sir, they turned off.
You know, I wish we had more time, but it is important, we feel, when these kind of incidents take place, to bring it to the attention of our Black Almanac audience. And you've seen it, you know what to do.